Good evening, one and all. I welcome to Kuril Founder B School show, where we invite our faculty to talk about or give overview about the subjects, and they will talk about their experiences as they are already been well known in their area, and they will be sharing about. Today we have Professor Ritu Mathur. She will be speaking on international marketing, and this is just an overview where you can learn more in detail when you join our postgraduate diploma in entrepreneurship and innovation management program. So I welcome Professor Ritu Mathur. Yes, Professor Ritu, you can talk about yourself and continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Professor Corel. Good evening, all the participants. First of all, I apologize for being late for the presentation because of some technical issues which were beyond our control. And thanks for your patience. Uh, I'm Ritu Mathur Barelia. I have several years of experience in international business. So, my forte is international business, and today I would like to talk with you about some fundamentals of international business. Without wasting much time, let us move to what international business is about. Now, how did international business start? International business started with international trade. International trade was basically the barter system where countries used to import and export goods from one another. Gradually, companies started creating market for their products in addition to mere exporting, and the four P's of marketing were invented, which are product, price, place, and promotion. So international trade thus graduated into international marketing. The MNCs which were producing the products in their home countries started investing in other countries. They started manufacturing their goods in several other countries and marketing them. This led to the rise of international business. Now, when we talk about international business, there are two terms that we need to be clear about. One is the home country and the host country. Now, what is the home country? Home country is basically the country to which a company belongs. Let us take an example of Unilever. Now, Unilever is based in UK where it is headquartered, and therefore the home country for Unilever is UK. The host country are all the other countries where the company operates. For example, in case of Unilever, Australia, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka are the host countries where the company operates. We will now be taking up the stages of internationalization, that is, how do companies internationalize? Let us take an example of a small company which is confined to the boundaries of its own country. Now, this is a domestic company who manufactures and sells their product within the confines of the national boundaries. A domestic company thinks that if something, the sales doesn't happen in their own country, it will not be possible in another country, and hence these are the companies who do not internationalize. The second category of companies is an international company. Now, sometimes it happens that the domestic companies produce goods which are more than the requirement of their own country. So, when they produce goods in excess, they think of internationalization. The companies at this stage thinks that whatever product they are manufacturing for the domestic market, they would extend the same product for exports without any modifications in the product. This approach of the domestic company is known as an ethnocentric approach, that is, extending the same product what they are manufacturing in the domestic market for the international market. The third category of companies are multinational companies. Sooner or later, the international companies realize that in order to be really successful in the international market, the extension strategy will not work. They need to modify their products as per the requirements and needs of the local market of another country. And hence, the approach changed from ethnocentric to polycentric approach. Toyota started exporting their cars meant for the Japanese market to USA. Now, since these cars were made for the Japanese market, the USA customers did not accept these cars as they found these cars to be overpriced, underpowered, and built like tents. And hence, Toyota had to re-import the entire lot back to Japan. Toyota took this failure as a rich learning experience and then they came up with cars specifically suited for US market and were very successful. Now this approach is also known as a multi-domestic approach. Multi because it is a multinational company and domestic because the international company or its subsidiary acts like a domestic company in a foreign country. Now, Philips of Netherlands was a multi-domestic company of this stage and its strategy was very effective until the Japanese company started competing with this company based on the global strategy. The Japanese company thought to standardize their products for the international market and hence they were able to achieve economies of scale and reduce their prices. Philips, who was manufacturing their products or tailor making their products for each country, could not compete with the Japanese company. The next type of company is a global company which has either a global marketing strategy or a global sourcing strategy. Now, when we talk about global marketing strategy, it is manufacturing in one company and marketing it globally. A very good example of this is Harley Davidson, who manufactures its bikes in USA and markets it throughout the world. We also have global sourcing company who sources the products globally and then market it domestically. Gap could be an example of a global sourcing company. The last type of a company is a transnational company which produces, markets, invests and operates across the world. There is no pure transnational company. However, many of the global companies satisfies being a transnational company. Examples could be Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, etc. So when we talk about international business, we have some approaches to international business which is known as EPRG orientation. E would stand for ethnocentric, P for polycentric, R for regiocentric, and G for geocentric approach. Now, what are these approaches? An ethnocentric approach is when a company extends the same product that is it is manufacturing in the domestic market to the international market. So the company does not make any modifications in the product and then extends the same product to the international market. This strategy or this orientation is least risky as you are not investing in any modifications of the product. So the companies who just wants to get into the international market, who wants to test the international market, enter the markets through ethnocentric approach. The second approach is polycentric approach wherein the companies realize that in order to be really successful in the international market, they need to tailor-make the product as per the needs of the domestic countries or the international countries. In this particular case, a company establishes a foreign subsidiary and decentralizes decision-making authority to the subsidiary. So these subsidiaries act as a local company in a foreign country. For example, Unilever had set up its manufacturing base in India specifically to cater to the Indian population as per their needs and requirements as per their taste. So this approach of Unilever is a polycentric approach. The next approach is a regiocentric approach, wherein the international companies realize that the regions close by have a similar requirement. For example, in case of Unilever, which was manufacturing its products in India, they realized that the close by region, that is Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, have similar requirements. And hence, Unilever started manufacturing the products in India and marketing it in the close by regions. The product was the same as was manufactured for the Indian customers, but the marketing strategy for each country was different. So this is a regiocentric approach wherein the companies cater to the requirements of the entire region, which is similar in nature. The last approach is a geocentric approach wherein the entire world is treated like a single country for the company. Such a company operates with a number of subsidiaries. The headquarter coordinates the activities of the subsidiaries. The operations are integrated and the subsidiaries gain from each other's experience. So this is about different stages of um, internationalization. Now let us talk about the motives of internationalization as to why a company gets into the international market. The first and the foremost reason is the profit advantage. That is, when you export to a large number of countries, your profit increases. There are several growth opportunities. Your business grows. You are able to produce much more, which leads to minimizing of the cost. That is, the cost per unit goes down and your profits increase. Companies also internationalize to beat domestic competition. Sometimes the competition in the domestic market is very high and it is difficult for a local company to survive in the domestic market. And hence, they try to enter into the international markets where the competition is low. Another reason to internationalize is domestic market constraints. It could be that a company is able to produce in excess of the demand in the local market, or the product reaches a maturity stage in the home market and hence the company tries to internationalize and gets into other countries. Economies of scale, the larger the production, the more will be the economies of scale, the lesser will be the per unit cost, and the more will be the profit. High cost of transportation. Suppose we are manufacturing something in India and the market for that particular product is in USA. Does it make sense to manufacture a product in India and export to USA? It doesn't because of the high transportation cost. And hence companies internationalize by setting up a manufacturing base in a company which has a high demand. So in this particular case, rather than exporting from India to US, it is wiser to set up a manufacturing unit in USA to serve the USA customers and save on the transportation cost. Another reason to internationalize is for the political stability. If a company is confined only to one country, it becomes politically very risky. Take, for example, a current example of Sri Lanka, wherein there is a lot of turmoil going on presently. There is a lot of unrest. Now, if if a company is confined only to Sri Lanka, in such a case of unrest, their profits will suffer drastically, their business will go down. But if the companies are also into international market, the risk is spread. When we talk about political stability, it does not simply mean continuation of the same party in power, but it means continuation of the same policies. When we talk about political stability, certain countries like USA, UK, France, etc. are considered to be politically stable. Another reason to internationalize is the availability of technology and competent human resources. A lot of American and European countries depend upon Indian companies for their software products and have located their BPOs and KPOs in India. One more reason to internationalize is a nearness to raw material sources. Now, suppose the raw material for a certain product is easily available in some African country, in which case it is advisable for a company to have their manufacturing base in an African country rather than in India. So, nearness to raw material will result in timely supplies of raw material and will also save on the transportation cost. Last but not the least, the availability of quality human resources at less cost. We all know that America depends upon India for technology and telecommunications. Now, lot of software companies are operating in India because it is easy to source human resources in India than in America. It is advisable for the American companies to have their operations located in India rather than to take employees from India to America and make them work over there. So these are some of the reasons that a company gets into an international market. Now, international market is very lucrative. It can reap great benefits, it can reap great profits for a company, but at the same time, it is risky. Hence, we have to be extremely careful while doing business in the international market. Let us discuss the case of a company called Taneja Export. It is a partnership company having two partners, and this company deals in women's apparel in cotton and hosiery. The company was aware that there is a huge demand of apparels in European countries, but it was also aware of the fact that the Indian exporters have not been successful in exporting to Europe. The company was keen to find out the reasons, and they took the assistance of Apparel Export Promotion Council and marketing agencies to find the reasons as to why the Indian exporters have not been able to export in Europe. Through research, they found that the Indian exporters were unsuccessful because of ineffective marketing, that is, their market was not up to the mark. There was improper quality control, there was no consistency in the quality, and then lastly, it was late shipment or non-adherence to the shipment schedule. Having known the problems, the company thought that they will take care of these problems and enter into the European market. And hence, Taneja Exports started manufacturing the goods for European market. They hired some marketing agencies to market their products well in the international market. They could maintain the shipment schedule and the quality checks right from the step of procuring the raw materials to the final quality of the final goods. With these steps, the company was able to set up their export market in Europe. Slowly and steadily, the company's business grew. The company's bankers were International Bank of India. Now, when you do foreign trade or when you get into foreign business, you need to route your documents through your bankers. So, the bankers of Taneja Exports were International Bank of India. The firm used to avail export packing credit facility from International Bank of India and adjust the same with the remittances received by the European buyer. So initially, to help overcome the funding problems, it used to avail export packing credit facility, and once the company got remittances from the European buyers, it was adjusted against the export packing credit loan that was taken by the company. Most of the export bills were drawn and sent for collection through International Bank of India. The transactions were successful and the International Bank of India were happy with the performance of Taneja Exports. Based on the past history and the increase in the turnover, the International Bank of India enhanced the credit limit of Taneja Exports. Taneja Exports was extremely happy with this enhancement of the credit limit, and they thought that they will now approach more companies and bigger companies for getting their export orders. All this while, Taneja Exports was eyeing a very reputed company in Paris by the name of Lauren Fashions, and when their credit limit was enhanced, they immediately contacted Lauren Fashions. Lauren Fashions, being a big company, was ready to place an order on Taneja Exports, but their condition was that they would make payment to them on DA 60 days. Normally, in the international business, the safest payment terms are through LC at site basis. But because Lauren Fashion was a big company and a reputed company, they said that they would make payment on DA, that is documents on acceptance, and 60 days after accepting the document. Taneja Export thought about the credibility of the company and they agreed the payment terms of DA 60 days. The exports took place and Taneja Exports submitted its documents, that is the invoice, packing list, certificate of origin, etc., to International Bank of India to be routed to Taneja Exports through Citibank Paris. This means that the bankers of Lauren Fashions was Citibank Paris and the bankers of Taneja Exports was International Bank of India. International Bank of India scrutinized the documents submitted by Taneja Exports and sent the documents to Citibank Paris for being submitted to Lauren Fashions. Now, while preparing the documents, Taneja Exports mentioned in the bill of exchange that the documents needs to be co-accepted by Citibank Paris. Now, the co-acceptance clause means that if there is a default on the part of the importer, the payment would be made by Citibank Paris. So Taneja Export mentioned this condition in the bill of exchange, which is a payment document. The International Bank of India scrutinized the documents and forwarded it to Citibank Paris. Citibank Paris subsequently informed International Bank of India that the documents have been accepted by Lawrence Fashions and that the payment would be made on the due date. The International Bank of India communicated the same to Taneja Exports. Taneja Exports waited for the payment on the due date, but when the payment did not arrive on the due date, they consulted International Bank of India. The International Bank of India sent a swift message to Citibank Paris inquiring about the payment status. A swift message is a message which is being exchanged between banks. When Citibank Paris was approached by International Bank of India, they contacted Taneja Export. They contacted Lawrence Fashions, and they got to know that Lawrence Fashions did not make the payment on time because they had turned bankrupt. Now the problem arises. Citibank Paris informed the same to International Bank of India, who in turn informed it to Taneja Exports. Taneja Exports immediately reverted back, saying that the documents were co-accepted by Citibank Paris, and hence, in case Lawrence Fashions is not able to make the payment, the onus of the payment should be on Citibank Paris. The International Bank of India again approached Citibank Paris, who mentioned that the co-acceptance clause was never agreed by them. Now, the co-acceptance clause was arbitrarily put by Taneja Exports in the bill of exchange. It was not there in the agreement between Taneja Exports and Lawrence Fashions. So Taneja Exports filed a suit with National Consumer Forum, New Delhi, saying that there was deficiency of services on account of International Bank of India. The International Bank of India did not mention about the co-acceptance clause in the covering letter, and hence they were not able to get their payment from Citibank Paris. They put forth the argument that the bank was deficient in not mentioning about the co-acceptance clause in their covering letter to Citibank Paris, and in case of non-co-acceptance by Citibank, they should have returned the documents to India, and the exporter would have arranged for an alternate buyer, or they would have re-imported the merchandise to India. This negligence on part of the bank had caused them great financial loss. After hearing the arguments of both the parties, the National Consumer Forum gave the judgment that the International Bank of India was deficient in their service and that they should remunerate the bill amount along with interest to Taneja Exports. The International Bank of India was not happy with the judgment of the Consumer Forum, and they appealed against the order of the Consumer Forum in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court asked for the documents from both Taneja Exports and Lawrence Fashions, and it realized that the co-acceptance clause was arbitrarily put by Taneja Exports without being agreed by Lawrence Fashions, and hence the mistake lies on part of Taneja Exports and not on the part of International Bank of India. The bankruptcy of the importer is the reason for loss to the exporter and not the deficiency of services by the bank. Now, this was a huge loss to Taneja exports. What do we understand? What do we learn from this particular case study? There are several lessons to take from this case study. First and the foremost is DA business is very risky. If for some reasons the buyer changes its mind to accept the consignment, he may not accept the documents on account of some discrepancy. This typically happens when the prices are going down. When the prices are going down, the buyer tries to get out of the deal and may not accept the documents, and hence the exporter will be in a big problem. Another lesson is that the exporter should not invent and provide any unilateral directions without the underlying agreement and concurrence of the importer and his bank. The co-acceptance of the documents was not agreed upon by the importer nor by Citibank Paris. When a party is new, when a buyer is new, it is the safest to take the help of Export Credit Guarantee Corporation. Now, Export Credit Guarantee Corporation has branches all over the world in all major countries, and when a customer approaches ECGC, they try to find out the credit worthiness of a particular buyer. They report the credit worthiness to the exporters, and the exporters then decide whether it is safe to export it to that particular buyer or not. In this particular case, had Taneja Export taken the help of ECGC, in case of default of payment from Lauren Fashions, ECGC would have reimbursed the payment to Taneja Export after deducting certain amount. And last but not the least, the lesson learned is that the bank's trade finance desk was not manned by qualified and trained personnel. The person handling the export documents should have found out the discrepancy in the documents, that is, in the bill of exchange, the co-acceptance clause was mentioned, but it was not mentioned in the agreement between the buyer and the seller. International Bank of India should have informed the exporter either to amend the bill of exchange or call for the underlying agreement. This simple step would have saved the reputation, monetary loss, and mental agony suffered by the exporter and the bank official. So, from this case study, we understand and we learn that though international marketing is very lucrative, you can earn great profits from international business, but at the same time, you have to be extremely careful while dealing with any buyer. Don't take any buyer at their face value. Investigate and do your research before supplying to any of the buyers. Thank you and wish you all the best. So you're not audible?
Okay. It was wonderful session, and I hope people who are watching and going to see this session will enjoy, and they will learn something from the case study, as well as the people who are more interested in learning international marketing can join us our program and learn from Professor Ritu and develop their companies. So with this, I thanks Professor Ritu to come for this show and take up the sessions. I hope the people will enjoy, or they can put up comments below this video. Thank you. I can see that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.